Hello and welcome back to the Professor Podcast. My name is Tyler, and today I'm joined with Councillor Lois Spede. Hello, Lois.
Hello.
And I think last time we spoke was, I think during the first lockdown, but that was online, was it?
That's right. Yeah. So a wee while ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first lockdown.
Yeah.
So life had changed
Yeah.
quite a bit at that time for us all.
It's good to be in person again, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to first ask you which area in Arbroath do you grow up in, or where are you from?
So yeah, I'm from Arbroath.
Yeah.
Other side of town. So in terms of constituencies, I grew up in the west side of town. But have stayed now for quite a number of years in the east.
Yeah.
And my ward and constituency
Yeah.
is Arbroath East and Linnan.
Oh. And which school did you go to?
Timmer Greens Primary and Arbroath High School.
Oh, okay, yeah. What first got you really into like politics or that sort of thing?
I think like my own kind of lived experiences, having my own family, I guess being a mum to twins, and like so being involved in the education system. Schools and education was obviously important. The community and how we kind of accessed community resources, activities, things to do, healthcare, all of those things. I think just gave me I just became more interested in kind of what was going on locally, what was available. We're quite reliant on a lot of supports, and I think that I just wanted to get more involved in kind of like low level, on the ground, community-based activities, and also then it just kind of grew from there into taking a closer look at the council and the decision-making process and how people can, kind of everyday people can get involved.
And how did you become a councillor?
So it just, it kind of grew from kind of my own work experiences in terms of supporting people to have a voice, and I guess it kind of just snowballed from there. Like I say, I was kind of keeping an eye on like what was going on in the community, where there was opportunities for like being involved in things that the council were doing and other community groups were delivering. And then I got involved with local community council, and like I say, I just kind of felt this kind of like there was just something that made me want to kind of take it further. And then there was like local elections coming up. First of all, it was a by-election, so that gave me like an opportunity to put myself forward and really just experience being involved in running a campaign. I'd been involved in a number of campaigns like over the years, but this was obviously a kind of an election campaign, which was very different. So that was where it kind of started. I wasn't successful in the by-election, but I think what it did was kind of helped, kind of like gave me a platform. It helped me kind of, I guess, get myself known, if you like, to people in the community that maybe didn't know me. A lot of door chapping, introducing myself, and then I was then fortunate when the election came round in 2017, the first time that I got elected in, and then just recently again this year.
You mentioned you were in, was it the community council before? Yeah, how was that?
So that was really good. That was a good way of kind of getting involved, like keeping up to date with what was happening locally. Getting to know other people, getting to know other community groups. So that was a good place, I think, to certainly start. I'd kind of met a few people that were involved in community council at some of the events that I'd been attending and going along to. And then that was where it kind of started from.
What would you say has been your favourite part, sort of, maybe your career?
I think, it is such a kind of, it's such a privileged position. It's such a unique opportunity, really. And so I think having the opportunity to like go out and meet with people, so community engagement, is definitely kind of for me the best bit about it, because ultimately that's what's most important, because that's where you kind of keep in touch in terms of like what local issues are, what matters most to people. So that bit is, without that, you couldn't then go on to do the rest of the council business.
Yeah.
Um,
And what local people have you been meeting?
so in this kind of last kind of few months since being re-elected, I've been trying as best as I can to reach out to older people, older people's groups.
Yeah, of course,
Because one of my appointments was older people's champion.
Yeah.
So I tried to kind of cover a diverse range of individuals and groups anyway previously, but with this new role, I've been meeting up more with older people, hearing kind of their stories, how life is for them, what matters, and what some of the challenges are as well. So, but really, actually, that's probably just a snippet of it. But just a wide variety of groups that I'm involved in and support. Anyway, just kind of week to week.
Yeah, and what would you say in the future, planning ahead?
Just to really continue that.
Of course.
I think you're like always mindful, like during your campaign time, where you're trying to get as much engagement and door knocking and reaching out as possible, but at the same time, it's important that that doesn't just happen like during an election time. So I think you just continually want to build on that. And although Arbroath East and Lunan is, in some ways it's a fairly small ward, but when you're trying to kind of cover that and get out and about, sometimes it's still a big area to cover. And being a councillor as well, I mean, try and kind of reach out to kind of the whole of Angus. So often there'll be kind of wider invites to meet with people out with the area too, which is important because often there's lots of projects being delivered in other parts of Angus, but are still there to really serve the whole of Angus. So it's quite wide and quite varied. So I think just keeping up with that engagement, and really just when it comes to decision making in council, ultimately, like when we meet for our committee meetings and we're taking decisions, just being confident that I've kind of got a grasp on as kind of wide a range of views as possible, and the decisions I take reflect, I guess, people's needs. Which isn't always easy, especially when sometimes proposals, are maybe coming that are to reduce the service or to change things. You want to make sure that change is still going to meet the needs of the people that you're elected to serve.
And you said that you first ran, was it in 2017? And what was that like? What happened? Like, did you think it was better the second time or the first time?
It was pretty nerve-wracking both times round. I guess, course, but different. I guess the kind of by-election, like I say, that kind of gave a kind of, I gained that experience of what it was like to run the campaign for the 2017 one. And I guess in many ways I didn't really know what to expect at all. So the fact that I got in was just, I was like pretty shocked. It was, completely delighted. And then I guess the second time round, you're not knowing whether like you've done enough, whether, people are kind of happy with, what you managed to achieve and how you carried out that role. So to get back in again was like, that was pretty sweet, because it kind of just gave that reassurance that kind of what I'd done for the 5 years, people were, I guess, reasonably happy with, and I increased my vote as well, which was really pleasing. Because it is hard work, and I think I learned very quickly that within our communities, like, we all will have kind of differences of views and opinions, different areas where people feel there should be improvements, or different areas of frustration, and sometimes even just on like one subject matter, you can get a whole host of differences, which is great that we all have that. But I think, that saying about like you can please some people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. So you never know just whether like you're doing enough, and I guess I'm really committed to try and do my best for everyone.
Yeah. And where did you go when you were first starting off? Where did you go to find out more about like how to get into the community council, how to get into these sort of things?
I think it was just through like looking out in like the papers at that time, or online, like in the library, just looking out for opportunities that were out there when there was like community groups meeting, or if the council were holding like events where they were seeking like public views and opinion. I just was keeping a lookout to see what was going on. And then from that, just kind of getting to know people, introducing myself, and then it was kind of just through word of mouth that I heard about the community council, and I thought I'd be really keen to get involved in that. And then from being in community council, just really did my own kind of like looking and researching to see then how I could like take that further in terms of standing for election.
Right.
So
So once a councillor like yourself has been voted in, how does the progress, like what happens after that?
Okay, so once like we all get elected in, so there's 28 kind of seats available, 28 councillors get elected in.
Is that in the whole of Angus?
And that's like covers the whole of Angus. So for Arbroath East and Lunan, there's like 3 councillors get elected. For Arbroath West and Letham, there's 4 councillors, and then altogether there's 28. So what then happens is that depending on like the political parties and where the kind of majority usually, because it usually would be out of the 2 main parties where the majority of councillors from a particular party, whether they're able to form like what becomes the administration of the council, who run the council. So once that's determined, the administration's formed, and then together as a council we then look to see what committees we would want to be on. So we would put ourselves forward, or parties would nominate like their group representatives for particular committees. So there's like a range of committees that cover like the range of areas of business and services that the council provide.
And you mentioned, is it 28? Just out of curiosity, is Arbroath the only one divided into 2?
That's the only, with it being like the biggest town, it's split into 2.
Where would a young person like myself who is interested in local issues, where would I be able to go to find out the sort of things?
Okay, so often like through like your school, there's often like youth council, youth engagement opportunities. So there are some members of Scottish Parliament, Youth Parliament. So that's kind of a route, or just looking at what's going on locally. The council website or the library will often give information with regards to opportunities in terms of like consultation, or pieces of engagement that the council are looking to do.
And you mentioned the Scottish Youth Parliament. How does that work?
Okay, so it's a similar type process really, in that young people can put themselves forward to represent like their local area in terms of young people and young people related matters. So that's something that your school would be able to kind of link you into if you were interested. And then from that again, there would be like a mini selection process of people putting themselves forward and being successful or not. Sometimes people need to try again, depending I guess on the interest. You know, if there's lots of young people putting themselves forward, then not everybody's maybe going to get that opportunity. But from the young people that I've spoken to that have been involved, it's been like a really rewarding and I guess a great experience,
Yeah.
a great process to be involved in, provides a lot of opportunity, and they do similar in terms of like engaging them with young people to hear what's what matters to them, what's going on locally within schools, and the wider community too. Just any issues that affect young people, they can cover, and then they can take forward at Youth Parliament, which also feeds into the wider works of our national political system.
That's good. You mentioned before that because in Arbroath, East and Lunan, you said that there would be a few like proposals that would be accepted, not accepted, etc. How does that whole progress work when someone's put forward like an application? How would that work?
So in terms of like the planning, you as a councillor, you'd be given training initially around that and how that planning system works. What's expected. If you were to object to a planning application, you need to be able to demonstrate good reasons as to why. So if the proposal was to agree, if the recommendation was for the planning application to be agreed, to go against that, you would need to be able to give good reasons as to why you were disagreeing with it. And that could be because you feel that there's been something in the report that's not covered, or that because a lot of the time it's balancing like the kind of the positives and the maybe any of the negatives, any of the kind of impacts. So it's about balancing that. So if you felt that actually there was more concern and there was more negative impact, then you were able to justify that actually I feel that this is a really important issue in relation to this application, then you have to be able to justify it. And it's an area as well that, like, although for those councillors that are on the planning committee, there will sometimes be approaches from people submitting applications or from objectors to an application, but until that kind of committee meeting comes and that the paper comes before the councillors, you can't express a view or an opinion. So you can acknowledge that someone's contacted you, but you really just have to wait until you hear the planning application from the officers, from those that are perhaps seeking planning permission for a development. They can come and speak to the committee. Objectors can come and they can express their concerns. And then once you've kind of heard like the fullness of the application, then you kind of reach your decision as to as a committee what way they want to go, whether they go with the application or they refuse it. So it's quite a complex kind of system, and sometimes there might be a split in the committee or within the council as to which way people want to go. Sometimes opinion can be divided, and it perhaps would have to go to a vote. And there's an appeal process as well for the person or the group or organisation or business that are putting forward the application. There's an appeal process that they can also go through as well, should they not be happy with the outcome. Okay.
And I understand that you ride your bike.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you thought Arbroath, Scottish Towns particular, Arbroath, how well it's served by, like, for cyclists. Do you think it's good or bad or could be better, or?
I think riding my bike is something that I think like a lot of us learn to do when we're younger, and then sometimes that kind of fades off when we get a bit older. For some of us, we go on to learn to drive, which I can do as well. But then I think just over kind of the years have always returned back to sport and to kind of active travel and cycling has been something that I've really enjoyed. So I think for me, like, from growing up when there was less traffic on the road and probably felt much safer to be out and about on the streets and roads round about, to now, I guess I feel confident enough to be on the roads, but I can understand how, like, many people would have that kind of fear and worry because the roads are so busy with much larger vehicles now than they were kind of 10, 20 years ago. I think we do have like lovely kind of rural and coastal cycle pathways,
of course,
which serve us well. And there is a drive to kind of increase that network and also to encourage more people to take up walking or cycling as an alternative to the car, if possible, because that's not always possible for various reasons as well. So I think there is good opportunities, there is nice ways to enjoy getting around by bike, and I think the town as well, I think it's really an individual thing. I know that many families enjoy going out together on their bikes, but will tend to stick to kind of like more of the safer cycle networks.
Because I saw that quite recently after the first lockdown. A lot of people were getting out for the first time, and did notice a lot of families on mostly rural cycle paths, but which I'd never really seen before. I thought that was a good thing.
Yeah, I think one of the highlights for me during like the pandemic, there was lots of difficulties and lots of struggles that we all experienced, but one of the kind of moments that stick out was going out on my bike when we were able to go out and have like, I think it was like half an hour exercise, and like riding down like through the town with like no cars on the road at all, and it was a really sunny day, and it just it's one of those times that kind of sticks out as being, it just felt such a it was a safe space, and it was really enjoyable to just ride through the town and have like the whole roadway that usually would be full of traffic to yourself. And I think that's obviously the hope, is that there can be that encouragement for people to do that, but it's quite a difficult thing, because until people feel that the roads are less busy and it's safer to do so before they feel that they can maybe venture out. But I know quite a lot of people that do cycle about the town, and I think when you're a cyclist, you get to know others that are out on their bikes a lot too.
Argyll's quite like a bottleneck for traffic, because unlike Forfar, which has a bypass, a lot of the traffic is filtered through the town centre in Argyll. Would you say that sort of has an impact on how people think about going out on their bike rather than
Yeah, I think so. I think the question that often gets asked is like, how do we get from like one end of town to the other safely on more bikes? It's okay if you use the kind of network pathways that go round the town,
and they're great.
Great. But if you want to get to somewhere more direct and more quickly through town, it can maybe be a bit more challenging. And originally there was a way back plans for Arbroath to have its own bypass around the town as well. So that's often something that comes up in discussion, is that, you know, maybe there was a trick missed at that time. Now to do it perhaps would be far too challenging. And a huge investment.
There's a lot of debate around those kinds of plans based on like whether it would take like normal customers who would go through town centre businesses, whether it would make them like not go through and just instead go around. But there's a lot of debate on that kind of subject.
That's it. Well, because cars obviously can only go partially through the high street. Whereas previously, it was like a full system.
Would you say
traffic.
that the precincts maybe been a positive sort of thing for it, or maybe not?
I can't remember like before when it was like traffic, but I quite like that you can kind of be in a space and not have to worry about traffic. I think that feels really quite nice and safe. But I think there's mixed views on kind of topics like that. And they're really interesting, because they've, you know, often things will go full circle and they'll have been trialled and tested before, and I think that's the interesting thing about kind of as a society, things change and evolve, and sometimes return back to previous ways, and our high street does attract a lot of attention in terms of concern around its sustainability, and when you look back I'm sure you'll have maybe seen a lot of the old footage of the high street and the differences and
I know.
different types of shopping and retail and produce that was on offer to now, and so, but I still like on our local high street quite often, regularly will pop down and spend time down there, and often that's some place that I would go for carrying out those bits of engagement that we talked about. I quite like being on the high street, although it does receive some criticism. It's where you'll often meet people that you haven't seen for a long time, and it's good to just, I quite like being downtown. Of course, we'd all want to see improvements and hope that there will, continue to be new units and new shops and new businesses opening up, which I think, to be fair, there has been. Even throughout the pandemic, there was new business open up, and or businesses were doing things a bit differently to attract customers.
And like you said before about the reason, it's nice to sort of not, it like takes away, I know that even it sounds like it doesn't sound that bad, but even just the thought of like crossing the road, it takes away that, which even that just gives you that extra bit of like calmness, which is a bit strange, but And I read recently, apparently Paisley, they wanted to actually bring back cars to their high street, and I thought that was really, really strange. I've never seen like that before. Usually it's like plans to reduce cars.
And I think that has been something that different places have looked to do, is to revert back to cars passing through, so that it makes it easier for cars to
in Aberdeen,
stop and shop.
Been debating for almost like before I was born as well, like 20 years, on whether or not to pedestrianise Union Street, and then they tried it, and then now they've went back, and it's just very, very strange.
That's it. I think, like we were saying, I think things often kind of go that full circle, or will revert back, and I think like often like people that'll get in touch with me are pedestrians, and they're challenged by getting around the town on foot, on our pavements, because of just various challenges, obstacles, parked cars, congestion, and so I think there's just so many competing factors in terms of how we live our lives, and for some getting around can be quite difficult, especially if you don't have a car, and so there's always, like we were saying, with it's always trying to get it right to suit the majority of people, and I think I often try to ensure that, okay, well, if there is a kind of impact on people that are more likely to be impacted in various other ways, so like for a pedestrian, especially a vulnerable pedestrian, maybe with like who's whether it be a parent carer with a pram or a buggy, or a wheelchair user, or someone who perhaps has got sensory loss, hearing or blind, it can be even more difficult. So it's often take forward cases where people are challenged by just things that other people might be able to overcome easily when they're out and about, such as like moving a bin out the way, or being able to move to the next bit of the pavement to cross, and that can be really quite difficult if you've got an additional kind of mobility need and requirement.
And I also saw recently outside Bordykes Primary School, I think this was actually a person who was at that primary school. And she campaigned for traffic calming, and it got built. I just thought that was a really interesting thing. Do you have any information on that, or? I'm aware of the young girl, Lily, that drove that campaign, which was great, and I think just demonstrates the importance of everybody being able to have a say and influence, like our community. And that was really effective, and I think there was a lot of joint work in there between the school,
the roads team, the police, the parent council, Lily herself and her friends and classmates, and the support of her mum. So yeah, it took that kind of whole community approach to bring those changes, which I think is great to see. And it's always good when young people, I think, have that opportunity as well, because sometimes they don't always maybe get heard. So I think that particular situation is a good example of young people being able to have a voice and influence change as well.
And around particularly the east side and the west side of Arbroath, there's been a lot of expansion with new homes, new housing areas, and would you say that's a good thing, or?
Yes, definitely. I think like my biggest casework really in council, so when people come with kind of individual issues that they're seeking help with, is often housing related. So people that are needing accommodation, that are their housing, their circumstances have changed, and they're needing a home, and so I'd always promote kind of or support the development of housing. But with that again, during that decision making process, if we're being asked to support a development, it's also looking at kind of the location and any kind of impacts on kind of like neighbouring areas as well, or making sure the road infrastructure is right, or the access to that development is kind of going to work. So there's always lots to consider when it comes to decision making, and then I guess it's just, I think, going on what you feel is kind of like the overriding right thing to do at the end, if it is going to create the benefit, what's going to create the greatest benefit and have the best impact.
And I know that recently a few sort of older style of houses have been demolished, and I'd say that is a good thing. I know in particular the houses at Barn Green. And I think that's a great transformation that went on around that area. Would you say that there's like more of that sort of to come, like the redevelopment of certain areas, or like Mayfield as well?
That's right. And then like previous over at Timagreens, you'll have seen the flats that are on the Westway that have come down. So quite a dramatic change to the landscape there. And then like you say at Barn Green, and I think that has been positive. And obviously the council continue to look for land that they can develop on where there's a need. And
a lot of new school buildings in Arbroath as well, I think, which I think is a really good thing. I think the facilities they've got now are fantastic, especially at Abbey View Primary. I think Arbroath has been really fortunate over recent years in terms of new school buildings. And I think for young people that is a great thing in terms of like their learning environment, and improvements to like their kind of school day in terms of their learning space, and I think that does go a long way. And it's, I think, the same with your home. If your living conditions aren't right, a lot of people live in maybe in kind of cramped housing, or housing that doesn't suit their need because of a medical condition, or disability, or whatever the situation is. If those things aren't right, then it impacts on everything else. So it is great to see new schools and new houses going up, and sometimes that maybe gets overlooked as well in terms of the town and the good things that go on, because there has been really positive changes taking place over just even the last 5 years. And I know that Arbroath has, its population's nearly twice that of the next largest town in Angus. Would you say its population compared to the towns around it is at a disadvantage, or it's like its connections to other towns, or? I think in terms of Arbroath and the population and this, the infrastructure and services that we do have in terms of like transport and having
like a bus station, rail connection,
Yeah.
Reasonably good kind of direct routes from from Arbroath to other towns. I think we're fairly fortunate that way.
Yeah.
And I guess in terms of the population, obviously the bigger the town, sometimes the greater the challenges there can be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think every kind of councillor in every ward wants to make sure that their town and surrounding area, rural villages, and those that are living remote as well,
Yeah.
that they don't get kind of forgotten about when it comes to investment or tackling and addressing some of the issues that are experienced more remotely as well. So it is important that it's kind of all taken into consideration, and that the whole of Angus and residents' needs are considered.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of effort does go in to do that. Has to be fair.
Yeah. Right, I'd like to thank you, Lois, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. As always, it's been great chatting with you.
Yeah.
And it's always good to kind of be asked questions, and never knew what was coming. So it's good because it does make you think, and hopefully it's been helpful for you as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, thank you for speaking with me. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.